Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you my May reading wrap-up. Okay guys, this should be a pretty quick one. I only have 3 books to talk to you about today. May was a very busy month for me. It totally flew by and I didn't read as much as I would have liked to, but that's okay. Life is just busy for me right now. If you don't know, I'm currently 8 months pregnant, so I just have a lot of things going on and reading has not been my priority, even though I really miss it. So I'm just gonna try and keep this short and quick and let's get right on into it. This is how my stats worked out, my ratings worked out for the month of May. I had 3 4-star books. I'd say that's pretty good. I definitely have some variability in these 4 stars. Like one of them is more of a 3.5 that I rounded up. One of them is definitely a 4.5 that I rounded down. And then the other one's probably just like a solid 4. So even though they're all the same rating, they're not all the same rating at the same time. Also, these are the 3 books that I'm going to be talking about in today's video. If you're only interested in hearing my thoughts about some of them, feel free to check out the description box. I'll have timestamps to where I talk about each book so you can jump around to the books that you are interested in. So the first book that I finished in the month of May was The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This is the first book in the Licanius trilogy, and I actually read this as part of the Shelf Space Book Club. If you haven't heard of the Shelf Space Book Club, it is a book club that up until just recently was run by my friend Jessie May, but she's taking a break from that because she just had a baby. And it's currently being run by Alan from the Library of Alexandria. I will link both of their channels down below. I will also link the live show that Jessie and I did discussing this book down below if you guys are interested. There is about like a 20-minute part in the beginning that is spoiler free before we jump into spoilers. I had so much fun doing that live show, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you want more of my immediate thoughts and reactions. I also have a couple of reading vlogs where I check in with you as I'm reading, so I'll link my reading vlogs down below as well. This is an adult high fantasy book that has been on my TBR for a while because it's recommended often for people who are fans of Wheel of Time. I read this primarily on audiobook. It is narrated by Michael Kramer, who is one of my favorite narrators. So when I found that out a long time ago, I purchased the audiobook. I will warn you, it is an Audible exclusive, so the only way you can get the audiobook is to buy it through Audible, which is not my favorite thing. I also had the hardcover out from my library, and a lot of the time that I was reading this, I was reading at the same time as I was listening. That's one of my favorite ways to read. I will say that there were some differences between the hardcover that I had and the audiobook. Sometimes one or the other had extra sentences or different word choices, and that's something that I always kind of think is funny whenever I do the two together, because then I can kind of see some different options the author was going through in different drafts, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, let me talk about the book. So this is a bit of a chosen one story, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to read it. The chosen one fantasy trope is one of my favorites. It's why I like the Wheel of Time so much, and anytime I hear a book or series has that trope in it, my ears definitely get perked. This book or series also has a bit of a prophecy thing going on, which I really enjoy, and there's a journey aspect to it, which is another thing that I like. So this book definitely had a lot of my bookish buzzwords, so I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. Oh, I gave this book 4 stars, and this is the one that I was saying was probably more like a 4.5 that I rounded down to 4. I definitely enjoyed the second half of the book a lot more than the first half. I don't know, this book was a bit of a roller coaster because at first I was really into it. The first 10-12% I was like, man, this might be a 5-star book. It started out with a bang, so much was happening, so many shocking moments, and then I got to a point where I felt like the rug was constantly being pulled out from under me. World building reveals were happening so fast and were starting to get confusing, and I was just feeling a little overwhelmed, and I was just I don't know, this seems like a bit much. But then once I got to the 50% mark, something was revealed that really got my goat. I don't feel like I can say what it is because it happens so late in the book, but it's something that I wish I could talk about. I think in our live show, we like labeled it as like mild spoilers for like a bookish buzzword. So if you want to know what it is, we definitely talk about it in the live stream. But once that happened, I was totally like digging the book again, and I really enjoyed the last half. It's definitely a book that kind of keeps you a little confused because there's just so much going on and you just have so many questions. It's definitely a really plot-driven book. If you're more into character-driven books, you might not enjoy this one because the characters were definitely not the star of the show. It was more of like, what is happening? How do all these things connect sort of thing. But I felt like this book was kind of like a mix between Wheel of Time. I also at some point compared it a little bit to Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind, but I also think that it reminded me a lot of the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks, mostly because of all of the like twists and turns and surprises, and it really keeps you on your toes, which is something that, as much as I have mixed feelings about the Lightbringer series, that's something that I really enjoy about that series. Overall, I really enjoyed this. I'm dying to continue the series and see what happens next. I hear from people who have read the whole trilogy that each book is just better than the one before and that the payoff at the end is really good, which is always good to hear because it really sucks whenever you read a whole series and the payoff at the end is not great. So I'm really looking forward to continuing on in the series. I don't think this book is for everyone. I mean, no book is for everyone, but if you like plot-driven books that have lots of like twists and turns and surprises with like interesting world building and magic, and that doesn't do a lot of like hand holding to explain those things to you, and you're okay with having kind of like more surface level character work, then I think that this is definitely a series to check out to see what you guys think. I had a lot of fun reading it. It was so close to being a 5-star read, but I just struggled with the first half a little bit and I didn't feel like I could give it 5 stars. So that's why I rounded it down to a 4-star rating. Okay, the next book that I read in the month of May was Drop the Ball by Tiffany Dufu. This is a nonfiction book. It's not typically something that I would pick up, but I read it for my work book club. This is part memoir, part self-help, but it's about how to like juggle all the things when you're a busy person. I do think it particularly leans towards like busy working moms. Tiffany Dufu is a busy working mom, and a lot of the book is about like when she first had kids and kind of the things that she had to change in her life to be able to juggle all the balls. And the title is referring to the idea that like maybe some balls that you're juggling are okay to drop. I thought this book was interesting. I enjoyed the memoir aspect of it and just hearing more about how she adjusted to becoming a working mom, especially, like I said, as someone who is currently pregnant and is going to be a working mom. I did pick up a few tips, I think, that are helpful, but at the same time, I didn't find her super relatable. She is someone who has a really like high-powered career, and she and her husband both make what I think is a lot of money, and so they do a lot of like outsourcing of things, and just like their lifestyle is so very different from my lifestyle. So a lot of times I just didn't find her to be relatable. So I can't say I recommend this to everybody. I mean, I definitely don't recommend it to everybody. It was a little bit hit or miss for me. There were some pieces of advice that she gave that I didn't agree with, or like just I would never do. But there were some things that I could relate to. Like, she talks about being, I forgot the term she uses, but basically a little bit of a control freak or a perfectionist in her own house, and how, like, if her husband folded the towels in a certain way and she didn't like it, she would, like, refold the towels. And that's, like, a ball she could drop because who cares how the towels are folded? Those kinds of things I thought were kind of practical. And also, she talks a bit about, you know, communicating with your partner and like figuring out who's responsible for what, and letting your partner do more things around the house. Like if you're one of those women who, or one of those people who likes to do things your way because you like to be in control, like trying to let go of that and realizing that even if your partner does something in a different way, it doesn't mean it's necessarily worse, and it might even be a better way than the way that you do things. Those kinds of tips I thought were helpful, but there were also a lot of things in there that I didn't relate to at all. I gave this a 4-star rating. This is the one that I think the further out I get from it, I'm like, I probably maybe could have rounded that down to 3, but I did pick up a few things that I thought were interesting, and it was a good book club book to discuss with my coworkers, a lot of whom are also working moms, and we kind of talked about the things that we agreed with and the things that we didn't agree with. A couple people in our book club like DNF'd the book, so it did make for a really good book club book, but it's definitely not going to appeal to everybody. Oh, and I primarily listened to this one. It is narrated by Tiffany Dufu herself, and I think that helped me to enjoy it a little bit more than if I had just read it physically, and it was available on Scribd. Okay, and then the last thing that I finished in the month of May, I finished this on the very last day. I was like, I need to squeeze in one more thing. I mean, I had been making good progress on it already, but the end of May was really busy for me because I had a family baby shower get-together thing with my extended family. But I managed to finish this right on the last day of the month, and that is Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This actually isn't out yet. It doesn't come out till July. Oh, I'm sorry. It comes out on June 29th. So not July, but the end of June. So thank you to the publishers and NetGalley. I got an advanced reader copy of this off of NetGalley, so I read this as an ebook. I also did this as a buddy read with my friend Rachel from the Shades of Orange. We have buddy read a lot of Riley Sager's books together. They're just really fun for us to buddy read together. And I don't want to put words in her mouth, but I think it's safe to say that I enjoyed it more than she did, but I can also see why a lot of people will not like this book. So Riley Sager writes thrillers. Out of the thrillers of his that I have read, because there's one that I haven't read yet, which is Final Girls, but the other ones of his that I've read, they've all had that aspect where like you think there could be something paranormal going on, but you're not really sure. And this book doesn't have that. It's just a straight up thriller. It also takes place over just one night. That's kind of why it's titled Survive the Night. So it's about a college girl whose name is currently escaping me. She's an interesting character. I feel like Riley Sager always writes interesting women characters. She doesn't drive because her parents died in a car crash when she was in high school, and ever since then she's never driven a car. And then also the other element is that her best friend and roommate was recently murdered by a serial killer. It's like towards the end of the fall semester, and she wants to go home to take a break from school because she's just having a hard time coping. But because she doesn't drive, she needs to find a ride home, so she finds someone off of this like ride share board. Also, this is set like in the 90s, so there's that aspect of like not having cell phones and technology, which I thought was fun. Definitely makes you appreciate the technology that we have. Man, this book is so hard to talk about because I don't want to give anything away, but also there's just a lot of stuff that happens. So it takes place all over one night, and the whole thing is that like she gets a ride with this stranger who possibly could be a serial killer, and then she has to survive the night. So one of the reasons why I think this book could be really hit or miss with people is that it definitely keeps you on your toes and is constantly kind of changing your frame of reference for what is happening. And I mean like constantly, like every chapter or two, you're just like, wait, that changes everything. And I think for some people that could get really frustrating. And at some point, I think for some people it would become unbelievable, or like you would have trouble suspending your disbelief to be able to believe all the things that were happening. I did struggle with that a little bit in the middle of the book, but then I don't know, I just bought it. I guess I suspended my disbelief and just went with it and just had so much fun with all the twists and turns that I didn't mind so much. And I also thought that by the end, some of the explanations that were given for the book as a whole, like the story as a whole, I thought made sense within the context of the book. I'm sure this makes no sense to anybody, but basically in the end, it's gonna depend on if you just buy it, like you believe it and you think it's reasonable, or you think that it was dumb. You know, it's like one of those thrillers where it kind of depends on the ending and how you feel about the ending. and if you think that the ending is a reasonable explanation for how things played out in the book. But at the same time, I don't think you should go from like the middle of the book to being like, let me just read the ending and see if it makes sense, because I don't think it'll make sense at that point. So I don't know. I could see this book really being hit or miss with people. Some people will think it's a total cliche and will hate the ending and just think it's really dumb. But for me, I thought it was a lot of fun. It's definitely my least favorite Riley Sager book that I've read, but I enjoyed my journey while reading it. And I think some people will maybe enjoy the journey at first, but then the further they get in will start to like not enjoy the reveals and what was going on. They might feel like it's a little bit much, like Riley Sager was trying too hard, and that the ending doesn't provide a satisfying explanation for what was going on. Whereas I thought the ending tied up the story really well and explained away some of the like issues I had with the rest of the book. Hopefully that made sense. Trying to be as non-spoilery as possible. But if you're a Riley Sager fan, this is a different book than some of his other stuff, and depending on how well-versed of a thriller reader, you may or may not like it, or just, you know, based on your taste, you may or may not like it. I don't know. I had fun reading it, and you guys might read it and think that I'm just like super easily pleased or something. And maybe that's true, but I had a good time reading it. And if you like Riley Sager, I say give it a shot, but just know that it could be hit or miss. Those are the 3 things that I read in May. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.